All right, so today I'm going to talk to you about the Toolman model for counterclaims. So counterclaims are like counter punches. You can see this is an example of your argument, and your argument has an opposing argument called a counterclaim. Your job is to then use that counterclaim to manipulate your argument. And it's very important that we do this in a professional manner, and I'm going to teach you how to do that today. Because if not, your counterclaim can end up looking like the correct, interpretation of the issue because you have handled your counterclaim maybe too roughly or you haven't researched it thoroughly. And to an academic audience, that can be very apparent. The first thing to know about developing a counterclaim is we're going to use the Toolman model. And the Toolman model is just a way of developing a very logical progression of ideas into a counterclaim. And so the Toolman model is based on 6 different parts of an argument: the claim, the evidence, warrants, backing, the rebuttal, and the qualifier. And I'm just going over the terms that you know and work with and what they mean in relation to the Toolman model. So the claim is the exact same as a thesis statement or your topic sentences, which are like the subclaims of your thesis statement. Evidence is the same as evidence, obviously. Warrants are the same as what you might call analysis, especially analysis that explains the connection between your claim or your thesis and your evidence. And then the backing is like an additional argument or argumentation towards your claim. The newer terms, which you probably have heard, but I'm going to talk about what they mean in this context, are rebuttal, which is also known as a counterclaim. A counterclaim gets a topic sentence and evidence. I would strongly suggest doing a counterclaim in either your solution section or your current state of the problem section. And in addition to getting the topic sentence, it gets evidence. And then you're going to spend some time using some analysis of warrants and backing. But what you're not going to do is warrant or back the counterclaims and evidence. What instead you're going to do is repoint out your particular argument in relation to the counterclaim evidence. And then the final part is a component of the rebuttal. It's called qualifier, and it's more or less the way that you qualify your argument based on the fact that there is a counterclaim that is reasonable to be making. So you're going to watch me just pull from my outline the way that I handled counterclaims. So I did mine in the current state of the problem, and I'm going to spend about 4 paragraphs dealing with the counterclaim. The first paragraph will be presenting the counterclaim, topic sentence, and 3 pieces of evidence that support that counterclaim. And then I'm going to go in and use my next 3 paragraphs to essentially argue against that counterclaim by boxing in that counterclaim and explaining the context of that counterclaim and why it doesn't hold true in a majority of the situations, or why it isn't the actual problem we need to be focusing on. And so I use more evidence to argue against the counterclaim than I do to present the counterclaim. But it is important that I do present some evidence. For me, I presented 3 pieces of evidence. It's important that I do present some evidence to give weight to the counterclaim. I also want to say that I will be highlighting the pieces of this and posting it in my outline so you can see it and refer back to it. I'm going to post that on Google Docs. But I just wanted to be able to show you kind of where they fit, and so I'll post this document as well as the finished outline on Google Docs. And as we're just looking and learning new models, the reminder to continue thinking about the rhetorical triangle, Aristotle's rhetorical triangle, even as you bring in the Toolman model. So a refresher on that rhetorical triangle: we're always thinking about ethos. We're thinking about our credibility, our honesty, our research, our ability to come off as professional arguers in our paper. And we're also using our ability to speak to emotion through things like anecdotes and stories that support like the emotional pull, as well as let me just argue that in general, when you have an impassioned argument, you're bringing in pathos. So those emotionally charged words that you're using that have negative or positive connotations, those are another way of using pathos in your argument. And circling back to ethos, another piece that is the most important piece of building ethos in our argument is that correct sourcing, using credible sources and citing them correctly. And our final piece of our three-way triangle is logos, and that is the logical elements of our argument, using things like evidence, making sure those evidence are fully backed and warranted. So just to explain, Tolman is a logos-based style. You're using a logical argument. And so that is one piece where logos really shows up is through this model.